This needs to stop. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's online metagame has always been a big point of criticism for those not in the competitive community. You would think the best combo in the game is Brawl Meta Knight levels of broken the way that seeing a room full of Waluigi Wigglers is 9/11 for casual players, but contrary to what Twitter might lead you to believe, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's meta is actually really good. Allow me to explain. Before that though, let me briefly overview what the meta actually is. For starters, we'll assume that every character vehicle combo I'm about to overview will be using roller tires and the paper glider, because unlike with characters and vehicles, there is no debate that these are the best options available of their respective classes. Rollers may have the lowest speed stat of any wheel, but that's okay because that will be made up for by the character later on. Where they really shine is in having the best acceleration and mini turbo in the game. These are the most important stats of any build, and it's why every online player uses them as the foundation of their combo. And yes, Red and Azure are equal. The difference is solely cosmetic, I just happen to prefer Red in almost every instance myself. Rollers are the true unsung heroes, as most of the uninformed people you'll find whining about the meta will point to the characters and carts. They're not the underlying problem here. As for said characters and carts, the most well-known meta combo, and the one that you'll find most of people complaining about, is Waluigi driving the Wild Wiggler. Why is this so good? Well, on top of the aforementioned best tires and glider, it has a great balance of all the most important stats, namely mini turbo, acceleration, weight, and speed. The other stats, while all of course valuable in their own right, are not as important as those main four. Now here's where things get interesting. While yes, Wiggler has been the dominant vehicle of the game for quite some time now, this is not the only combo seeing usage among top players. Depending on your playstyle and what you value, you have a number of alternatives that are just as good, if not better for you than Wiggler might be. One combo that has seen a massive spike in popularity over the last year or so is Waluigi in the Biddy Buggy. This combo sacrifices a bit of speed and weight for better acceleration and mini turbo, and given its dominance in the time trial scene, most that use Biddy Buggy online are doing so to try and drive faster than the Wigglers. Another reliable option is Mr. Scooty, which has the exact same stats as Biddy Buggy, and it has had a sizable player base for even longer than Biddy has. The main difference between the two is that Scooty has a smaller hitbox, making avoiding items online much easier, while Biddy is generally preferred by those that seek raw lines. Two more options that, while less prominent than the big three of Biddy, Scooty, and Wiggler, all have their arguments for being just as good, are Wario Scooty and Inward. Wario Scooty is a great hybrid between Waluigi Wiggler and Waluigi Scooty, and shares similarities with both combos. However, it does have one big flaw that I'll explain in a moment. Inward is its own entirely different playstyle. It drives differently, it has its own strengths and weaknesses, but unfortunately I don't ever use it, so I'm not qualified to talk about it beyond the fact that it definitely has carved a very interesting niche into the game. Why Waluigi though? You may know that him, Roy, and Donkey Kong all share the same stats. Well, there's a couple of reasons we single him out. Waluigi has a slightly smaller visual model than the other two, so you can see your surroundings slightly better. The difference is minuscule though, and doesn't make a difference in 99% of scenarios, so the other reason is much more important. People use Waluigi because people use Waluigi. I'm well aware of how stupid that sounds, but hear me out. Blending in is a very important aspect of this game to avoid being targeted, especially in team formats. For instance, if you know that your teammate is a Waluigi player, and you see a Roy in first on the minimap, you know you're safe to throw the blue shell. This is the biggest downfall of Wario Scooty, because since Wario and Dry Bowser are in a different weight class from Waluigi, Donkey Kong, and Roy, you lose the ability to blend in. Another advantage of blending in is that sometimes in the middle of a race, players' names will take a second to show up on the screen above the character, so you always have to be careful before you throw an item out of fear of hitting your teammate. If you're like me and play on a team where you're one of the only Wiggler mains on the roster, you can much more easily identify who is safe to hit if you know the combos of your mates. So, that's a brief overview of the top 5 combos in the game and why we use them. Now for the main point of the video. Why does the meta get so much hate from those not in the community? Well, from what I can gather, it's mostly due to misconception. A common argument I've seen is of people comparing the overabundance of Waluigi players in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to that of, for example, Steve's in Smash Ultimate or Bayonetta's in Smash 4. However, this argument is just flat out wrong. In a game like Smash, each character has a different playstyle. matchups are determined by the strengths and weaknesses of each character and how those interact with one another. Mario Kart is not a fighting game. With the exception of Inward, every single combo plays the same, so there's no reason to use something unoptimal in a competitive setting when you could just use the same thing but better. When you want to play the game at the highest level, you want to maximize your ability to do so. It's common sense. However, that's only an argument that our meta isn't bad, but it's more than just that. What makes it actually really good? Well, the game definitely still isn't perfectly balanced, and some combos are very clearly better than others, but this is the most diverse metagame any Mario Kart has ever had. For the past decade and more, every Mario Kart game to have actively been played online has had one, maybe two combos good enough to see online play. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe having 5 that are all equally as good as one another, and another handful that are just a step behind, is a huge step in the right direction for the series from a competitive standpoint. You know, for how much praise Mario Kart Wii gets as a competitive game, and don't get me wrong, it does deserve a lot of it, it's really funny how using anything but Flame Runner or Mach Bike in a competitive event will literally get you penalized for trolling. This is real. I get that Wii is probably the most unbalanced game in the series, but this is still absurd. Just be thankful that the modern games are no longer at this level of unbalanced. Will there ever be a Mario Kart game in which every single combination is as good as each other? Probably not, and if I'm honest, I prefer it that way. We, as a community, instead of sitting around and letting outsiders get the wrong idea about our game, should stand our ground and defend what we do. Because, at the end of the day, no metagame will ever be perfect, so let's embrace what we're given because it's already pretty damn good.